Today's video, we're going to take a look at what makes Stephen Curry great. Wardell Stephen Curry, aka Babyface Assassin, aka Chef Curry with the pot. Great player, all time. We're going to be looking at what makes him all time, because he's a very nuanced player and there's a lot of different dynamics to his game. He's got a fantastic resume to follow up. I mean, if you've ever seen videos of mine in the past, you've probably heard me be critical of Curry in different series that he's played in, but I want to make one thing clear. No matter who you analyze, who you watch, someone's feelings are always going to get hurt if you're providing any sort of analysis or breakdown, but I like to make it clear that, you know, I always respect and recognize game. I mean, my first time watching Curry, I was probably in elementary school. My older brother was watching the Davidson game, and there was this skinny kid, you know, just killing these boys all over the court, but especially from deep. I mean, the TV was one of those little 12 by 12 TVs, and it was like watching a fighter who was one weight class too low. I mean, it was clear he had a great feel for the game, and he was a dynamic offensive force. Now, Steph Curry, interesting fact, he was actually born in the same hospital as LeBron James in Ohio, and had the privilege of being born to parents who had a plan for him and his siblings to succeed. Steph obviously had a lot of help learning from a great shooter in his father and being surrounded by NBA resources, but no matter what anyone wants to say, his dad cannot go out and play for him. He and his brother put in that work to become very good amateur players and go on to the professional level. Now, Steph's shooting form is one of those things that we have to take a look at. It's very clear that's one of those things that makes him an all-time player. He has a high release point. There's really no hitch in his shot, and it's a quick release. I think a lot of athletes, you know, with his style are akin to someone basically who flows like water. I think of guys like fighters, Terrence Crawford, or if you're looking at soccer, guys like the Brazilian Ronaldo, the OG, guys who have a really great flow with their game, not really robotic or too technical. I mean, obviously there's technical prowess, but he flows like water in terms of his jump shot. Very smooth, quick release, high release point. It's obvious that they worked on that. A lot of ball players, their jumpers are really robotic and stiff. The reason guys like Ray Allen could, you know, have a technical shot and still be highly accurate is he's just highly gifted, and he shot it the same way every time. Guys like Larry and Reggie were great shot makers, and their shot form wasn't the, you know, prettiest, but I mean, overall, they shot at the same time every time, and they had great touch. So Steph Curry's form, you know, it was basically handcrafted by himself and his dad, just fine-tuned in the lab. Definitely, that's one of those things that sets him apart from a lot of people, because he can get a shot off basically anywhere, anytime, with no real space to work with. Now, if you compare his shooting form to the great shooters of today, it takes less time to shoot than, you know, great shot makers like Dame, Trae Young, Buddy Hield, Joe Harris. I mean, his elbow, legs, and wrist are basically always in line. He doesn't have a wide base, requiring less real estate to operate. Now, he's always going to be known as one of those great draft day steals, considering that the T-Wolves took 2 point guards in front of him. I watched that draft with Johnny Flynn, a really good college player at Syracuse, and Ricky Rubio, really good player over there overseas before Curry. And the Knicks just missed out on him by 1 pick, which I'm sure the New York Knicks would have loved to have him. No disrespect to Jordan Hill, but they would have loved to have Steph Curry over Jordan Hill in that draft. Now, Curry, if you look at his career, the first few years, it looked like he might never actually get started in the NBA. He had really bad ankle issues, and thanks to a strong will, good surgery, and good rehab, he was able to recover by focusing on strengthening his hips, specifically to unload the demand on his ankles. I mean, the hip, knee, ankle chain, very important in terms of strengthening each one of them appropriately to prevent wear and tear on the others. Now, out of the training program he was working with, he improved his deadlift from being about 200 pounds before he started training to being able to deadlift 400 pounds, which is the second strongest on the team, behind what's his name, Festus Ezeli. He was a pretty big guy. Festus, he was probably 6'11". He's a big man, played center. So for him, at Steph Curry to be about 6'3", you know, not a very heavy player, and lift that much safely, deadlifting that much, that's great core strength, great strength with the hips. We got to give him his credit. So definitely we got to give him credit, but also his team, not just the Warriors, but his personal team, for enduring and staying focused. And we definitely, you know, I wanted to separate the Warriors. We got to give them credit for being patient and not giving up on their top 10 draft pick 2+ years in, and focusing on getting him the right treatment. Now, that dedication to the craft is something I'd like to touch on in a different aspect. Steph Curry is probably, if we have to look at him in terms of effect, he's probably the biggest offensive force we've seen in the last 10 years. Now, I want to clarify what I meant by that. You know, someone like Kevin Durant is probably more versatile and can hit every shot in the book, along with great finishing at the rim. But I'm not talking about who's the most versatile or who's the most talented. I'm talking who is probably the biggest impact on offense when he steps on the court. Steph Curry is probably the best knockout punch, not just in basketball, but potentially in sports the last 10 years. I mean, in boxing, knockout power, it might not be displayed every fight, but the threat of it is enough to do damage on its own. I mean, if you know the other guy has knockout power, you're not going to walk him down. You're not going to try and walk in recklessly because you know you might get caught with something and you might wake up on your back looking up at the lights. Steph Curry, when he's on the court, he's not like other shooters in the game. When Dame Lillard is on the court, you know he can go off for 50 at any given point. Same with Trey and a lot of other guys. But Curry's the only one who has that ability to get hot and move around the court the way he does off the ball. Now, his off the ball play is really something that separates him from the crowd. Curry runs around the court almost like a Rick Hamilton or a Ray Allen, coming off screens, drawing the defense out and forcing the defense to always play honest. Him running around wouldn't mean much if when he gets to a spot he can't hit. This is why you don't really see guys like Russell Westbrook trying to get open on the perimeter, because it just doesn't make sense as a defender to run around trying to keep up when you know he's going to shoot in the 20s from downtown. But having to keep up with Curry the whole night, it's basically like that fighter. It's like fighting Gervonta Tank Davis, basically. I mean, everything is going well until you get caught with an onslaught or that left hook or uppercut from hell. You get caught with that, and it's a long night of having to be perfect. There was a quote, remember I looked this up, Jason Kidd stated, Steph is the best conditioned athlete in this game. And obviously Draymond, his teammate, also stated, when you think of most superstars in this league, most of the damage is done with the ball in their hands, as opposed to Curry. Can he do damage with the ball in his hands? Absolutely, but he's equally, if not more dangerous when the ball isn't in his hands, end quote. Now, Curry does high-level aerobic conditioning, which sets him apart from the other great combo guards of this time. I have to admit, when I was in high school, I was with the mindset that you could take Lillard and plug him into the Golden State offense, and it would work just as well as if Curry was there. I'm older now, much wiser than I used to be. That offense was created around Curry's motor and his skill set. Now, Lillard and other players like him don't have that kind of wear on the opposing team's defense where they can just wear them down just from their movement alone. Another thing that separates Curry from guys like Buddy Hield, Trae Young, is that while, yes, Golden State, they do hide him on defense, it's not because he's a particularly weak defender. He actually does give good defensive effort. They hide him because, at the time, they had a two-way Swiss Army knife in Klay Thompson, who can give guys like Kyrie, Lillard, absolute hell due to his defensive effectiveness. Whereas guys like Kyrie, Trae Young, Luka, they don't give good defensive effort, and they can definitely do more. Curry's not a lockdown defender, but he stays in front of guys and he gives solid effort. He fights like hell when he's on defense. I've seen him give good effort. He's not a cone. Quite a few guys that you see now, especially no disrespect to Luka, great offensive player, but he's basically a cone out there on the defensive side of the ball. And for Curry, there's no way he could have been a cone, considering that the Warriors had really highly defensive rated teams with their championship years or contending years. In 2022 they were number 1. 2017 they were number 2, 2016 number 5, 2015 number 1. There's no way you can be a cone on defense and have your team have that great defensive potency. Now, when we look at Curry as an overall player, he really should be in the conversations for pioneers of the game. Now, I'm not going to call other players carbon copies because they are unique in their own way, but let's just say this about Curry. He's often imitated, never duplicated, has not been duplicated yet. The man is a 6'3" shot maker with a great handle, a green light once he steps anywhere across half court. He has really good court vision, almost like a Pete Maravich, just slinging the ball everywhere. That's kind of something that gets him in trouble sometimes. He's fairly active on defense. He's a great off-ball player, absolute monster when it comes to running off the ball. He runs lots of miles per game, keeps the defense active. They don't really get a chance to sit and rest. He's extremely consistent overall. You can't argue with his results. Great shooter, great finisher at the rim as well. He doesn't really get credit for that, but he's a great finisher at the rim, and people have to play him honest because he actually can shoot, dribble, and pass. Very key skills. A lot of people can do maybe one or two, but not all three at a high level. He's top at all those levels. Probably the worst ability he has is maybe his passing, and it's still very slick. And most important, he's a great winner. He's been a part of multiple championship winning teams in different iterations. He's won with that original big three. He's won with KD. Obviously, they had the back-to-back. And he's also done it where he wasn't necessarily with a big three. That Warriors team, the other players, Draymond, Clay, they were not really at their full 2015-16 selves. That 2022 chip they won. Curry was clearly the standout leader on that team, standout player. I mean, overall, Curry could have easily told Golden State to veto that Kevin Durant signing back in the day. He could easily been like, kick rocks, get out of here. I've done it before. I don't need him. I'm a unanimous MVP. Kick rocks. But he did not. He opened the locker room up to KD, and you have to give him some credit. And overall ego issues, you don't really see any ego issues with him, Clay, or Draymond. Specifically, Draymond does not challenge Clay or Steph. He's challenged other players, but he's never stepped up to one of those boys and been disrespectful. He's always been respectful to that core group. So, I mean, that whole dynasty, it goes as Curry goes. He's one of those guys who is going to have to be retired for a few years before he gets the kind of love and respect that he deserves from a basketball standpoint. If I had to compare him to anybody, I'd probably compare him to Kobe Bryant in the sense that he's a second-generation NBA guy who took the baton from his father and absolutely ran with it. I mean, this is a perfect example for those guys out there. You know, you have your son. This is a perfect example of what having a plan for your son and guiding him with care and wisdom does. I mean, shout out to the greatest shooter of this generation and possibly all time. You know, as usual, don't be mad at me, be mad at yourself.